Kaylee, welcome home to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I'm so glad you're back to do another one of our Hopecore episodes.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited for all that we have to chat about today.
Well, before we dive in, I would like to set the stage that we are recording this on June 10th, 2026, and we are on the cusp of the luckiest day astrologically in the entire year. This is all that the girlies have been talking about on TikTok. So I just want to pause for a moment and lean into that energy and just ask you, I have not mentioned this before, I'm throwing this at you right now. What area of your life would you most like to harness this lucky energy in?
I think just because my life has been so surreal and crazy over the last few months with my career and really stepping into my author services and being seen more on social media, things like that, I'm really hoping that I can harness this energy through my career and just like finding more people that I can help that are within the same vibration as me, and it's easy to work with them and kind of have that feeling of community around me that I'm wanting to continue to build. So
Oh, I love that. That totally makes sense. Sounds like you. Great answer for an on-the-spot question that I did not mention to you at all in our pre-production call. Thanks for just rolling
all
with
good.
it. Okay, well, we are here to talk about a really interesting topic today, and I love that you brought this one up. We are here to talk about regret. And so initially, when we first say that word, right, I'm sure everyone has like a reaction. There's that physiological reaction of like, ooh, that thing that I haven't said out loud to anyone that is in the back of my mind that I always think of in those moments when I'm unsure of myself or I'm questioning things I've done, things I want, things I've said, right? So regret comes up and we initially have that feeling. But today we are actually going to talk through that feeling. We're going to talk about the books that really brought regret to the surface and kind of made us look at it differently, look at our lives differently, and also what regret can teach us. So we're going to just dive into the topic. Kaylee, when you think of regret, what comes to the surface for you?
A lot of things come to the surface for me because I feel like most of my life, or at least in my 20s, I feel like I've had a lot of quote unquote regrets, changes that I've made, things that I've done that I've looked back on and I'm like, ooh. But for me, the last couple of years here have been trying to like see regret through a different lens and seeing it more of something that I can be proud of, like the mistakes that I made, because we all make mistakes as humans. We're not perfect. And I think just having that self-awareness and really sitting with yourself and, thinking about things that you regret or that you missed out on or you wish you would have done, and the shoulds and the coulds and the what ifs. I think it's just really important to see regret as something that can actually be something that can serve us and help us become who we want to be. Really, it's part of, I think, dismantling things about ourselves that maybe we didn't plan on doing, but it's like in the, pursuit of happiness, it's something that I found has helped a lot, just coming to terms with things and what I'm wanting out of life and things like that.
Oh, I love that perspective. And it's interesting because I like how you mentioned age playing a part in it, right? Because time is a huge factor in this. There's something that you can regret in the moment or even a year, a few years after, but things look and feel and serve differently as you move through the lifespan and you reflect on things. So I would say I had a pretty distorted perception of regret for a really long time and beat myself up for being wrong or bad or whatever, like any negative connotation you come up with. But it is interesting because given time, I do believe that I was beating myself up for not knowing things that I was supposed to learn through time and experience. And I was just being really tough on myself. So I'm saying that to anyone listening who finds themselves in those shoes and feeling like I'm constantly beating myself up for not knowing better, for not handling something better, but I didn't have the information or I didn't have the skill yet, like that's okay too. So that is one lesson I've learned about regret. And I also like the idea of looking at our mistakes, and I'm saying this in quotes, but no one can see because it's an audio podcast, but our mistakes and our accomplishments, and sometimes how they change position throughout our life when we look back on things. Like some of the things that people perceive as the biggest accomplishment that we've ever done actually didn't serve us that well. And yet, those quote unquote mistakes are the things that set us on the right path. And that is just how I feel, but you are nodding along. So I'm going to go with it and say that maybe we're on the right track with this topic.
Yes, very much so. Very relatable and something that I feel like a lot of us can relate to. And just not many of us, I feel like, talk about it. We don't talk about the things that we messed up or the mistakes we made, or like it's hard to admit sometimes, right? Like if you haven't really sat with those feelings or like gone through the healing process, it can be a touchy subject, but I feel like it's kind of just looking at yourself in the mirror and just being like, hey, like this happened. This is what I learned, and I always try and see regrets as lessons in a way, and just kind of see it more in that positive light, even though it can be such a negative connotation, like you mentioned.
Leaning into that, sort of the positive side of it, let's take a look at the flip side of regret. Because somebody could be knee deep in regret right now and being like, what are you two talking about? There's nothing positive that came out of this. Everything is terrible. Stop talking. But let's,
Mhm.
like I said, lean into that. So thinking about the positive qualities of regret, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is it's an opportunity to not repeat a pattern. So that regret can sting so much sometimes that it is the thing that almost pulls your hand back from the fire. It's that lesson that you couldn't have learned any other way. And I think in that way, it can be really, really helpful. Not trying to gaslight myself or spiritually bypass, but I do think sometimes it's like you never have to make that mistake again because you did it once. And it is so poignant. You don't have to go back.
I definitely agree. I feel like there's many things in my life. Like I mentioned, my 20s were full of just trial and error, as most people's 20s are. But I was just telling Casey before we started recording that I just, I really have over time, it's like building a muscle, but just like accepted where things are at with certain like regrets I've made or mistakes that maybe in other people's point of view might still be a mistake, but to me I'm just like, no, this is the best thing choice I ever made actually for me. And one of those things was leaving my nursing career. Like I used to be a registered nurse and I did the work, I took the schooling, I checked all the boxes off. I was like, to society, like claps and snaps for you. You're doing the thing, right? And especially for a family too that's very like career oriented and just kind of like checking off the boxes of like what you should be doing at a certain age. I just, it took me time to come to terms with not only my decision to leave nursing and just be like I'm done, because in my head it was always like I wasted so much money and my parents' money and just time overall. But I learned so much through going through that experience of nursing school, even where I like there were so many times that I wanted to quit, throw in the towel, but I was like, finish what you started type of thing. And I learned a lot through that of just like how resilient I am and how what perseverance looks like, because that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was go through nursing school. And even just like in the trenches of my first year as a registered nurse, it was just like you're thrown into the wolves basically. And yeah, now it's just kind of funny to see people's reactions to me just being like, nope, I'm not doing this. Like I actually have my own business now. And it's very just like taboo still to a lot of people in my like hometown and things like that. But to me, I'm just learning to build that muscle of just standing in my ground and just being like, you know what, this is what makes me happy. So like I have always said to you, I was so miserable when I was in that career. And like even though I was making all the money and, looked great on the outside, it was something that really affected my mental health. And I'm like, I'm only, in my late 20s, like I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. And it took that like aha moment for me to just be like, I can't continue on. And I feel like people have come around, and if they haven't, it's just kind of like it is what it is. But yeah, it's taught me a lot just from that. And there's other mistakes I've made and things that I've done too, but I think that's the biggest one that stands out that I feel like a lot of people can relate to if they've gone through like career transitions, which is a lot more common than we think.
Exactly. And I was nodding along while you were sharing because I was also thinking of an important point we also never talk about is that sometimes people are very reactive because you're the first person who's given them silent permission to do the thing they want to do because you're modeling it for them. And very often that reaction is that first time of like, oh, so you did this incredibly difficult thing. You feel so confident in yourself that you can now set that aside and do another very difficult thing. That experience can be the first time they've seen someone do that and not get stuck in a rut and not be a martyr to their own life and try to continue to pursue happiness in all areas. And so it's interesting, some of the biggest reactions I've ever received in my own life when I've made those decisions I now know, seemed very rooted in that. It was like I had stepped outside the prescribed way that women are allowed to walk through accomplishments. I am not allowed to say, yes, I did that. I check it off the list and now I'm moving in a different direction. It was like, no, you made this choice. You've got to stick with it forever. And you know what? Because we are talking about regret, that would have been the biggest regret of my life. And before we signed on, I'll just give a little context. I also stepped away from a profession. So Kaylee and I have a lot of alignment in that area of our lives where we stepped away from the thing we worked really hard for that we were good at and that people thought was amazing. And that's okay. So I'm not giving permission to anyone listening to be like, quit your job. You don't need it. It's more about finding what that is for you and checking in with yourself and saying, am I doing this thing, this relationship, this life, this job, how I treat myself, how I talk to myself, because I truly want that? Or am I being influenced by what I should do? And I wanted to highlight that word should because you had said it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget how big a part that plays in how we live our lives. And by also, I just like to say caveat, we're all still in it. Kaylee and I are in it. This is stuff we deal with all the time. No one is above anything. We're just having this conversation because it's really important. And some of the books we read touch on this topic and really shine a light on living a life where you are not shackled to regret. You can experience it, you can learn from it, and then you can kind of liberate yourself from it. And I think that's really beautiful storytelling.
It's so crazy too how expectations can really cloud our judgment or like decisions that we make. And I love to just kind of, I don't know, I cope sometimes with humor. So a lot of the times I'll find these funny TikToks that are just like so relatable of other people going through the things I'm going through. And they're just strangers on the internet, right? But it's just so refreshing to see. And another one that I saw the other day that I was just telling Casey about is that I saw this girl post a video and she was like, first in my bloodline, to be 32 with no kids. And she's just like on the beach, just chilling by herself. And I was like, this is so hilarious and so relatable because same girl, I am the first in my bloodline at 33 now to have no children, to not like, have a house bought and have a husband, things like that. Like it's crazy to think about, but it's just like it's actually so freeing too because it's like I'm that person making the mark. Like I'm like changing things or like hopefully, yeah, like you said before, being that role model for someone else that feels like they have to have it all figured out at a certain age or they have to have all these boxes checked. And it's just like, no, it's not realistic. And things have changed so much from when our parents were our age. And I feel so grateful that I do have the privilege and the opportunity to be where I'm at and make these decisions for myself. And I just want to like preface with that as well.
And I have to jump in and give just like however anyone wants to receive it, like big sister advice. No one has ever died from not getting married or having kids or staying in the same job for, like that has never harmed someone. But being pushed into making choices that you in your gut did not think were right has caused a lot of harm for people. And I say that just to encourage people that, along the lines of what we're talking about, like you get to choose. And just because you've had regrets doesn't mean you've made mistakes. I love some of the biggest regrets I've ever had because they've just like sent me on a whole different path and it's been so helpful. But when it comes to those areas in your life where you're feeling pressure, I think I just really want to encourage everyone listening today, whatever area of your life it is, the healthy decisions in your life will not come in the form of screaming pressure or societal pressure. They will beckon you. And that sounds super corny as I'm saying it out loud, but I know it to be true in my soul. And when you're talking about being the first in your entire bloodline, I I think about my own journey or even my sister's journey, not to give too much information about personal lives, but God, I am so glad that I trusted my intuition and waited for the right things. And I'm so glad she did too, and I'm very proud of us for that. And it can be really hard to be the first person generations in who makes a different decision. And it can feel like you're doing something wrong, but I feel like we're getting really deep in this topic. I just apparently was very passionate about it. But I just want to say to
Really?
anyone listening, because like I didn't have anyone in my ear encouraging me as a young person, be like, it's okay. You don't need to find the partner. You don't need to do this early. You don't need to stay here. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to go. You're allowed to try that new thing. And that kind of brings up a thought, really pulling on the thread of what you mentioned and what I brought up is that at times starting over requires a certain amount of letting go of who you used to be and who others expect you to be or who they remember you as. And, there's something I used to say to myself. I do a lot of like stuff to pep myself up, and we'll do a whole other episode about what's wrong with me and why I do that sometime in the future. But I would always used to say, the death of the person you used to be will lead to the birth of the person you're meant to be. And that was my like little mantra as like life seemed to be falling apart and unfolding. And I really want to kind of bring that up with you before we kind of pivot into the books and the inspiration, but that letting go, what does that feel like for someone listening who maybe hasn't done it yet and who can be a little thrown off by the feelings that rise to the surface when you start letting go of that identity or you start making the decisions that people don't really agree with and they start giving you feedback on? So I really am putting the spotlight on you, Kaylee. Can you
Yeah.
share with us, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was terrifying. When you were saying like that feeling of isolation or loneliness of being like the only person that can give yourself a pep talk, like that's how I felt. Because it's like I feel like most of my life I've been the type of person to like try and like get advice or words of wisdom from someone to like aid my decision making. And almost like because I'm also a people pleaser, I would want to like see if what their reaction would be, if they would be disappointed with what I'm telling them, things like that. And oh my gosh, it took me so long to just finally be like, okay, anyone can have their own opinion on what you're doing. It's not their life though. Like you need to do what's right for you and what feels good in your gut. Like gut feelings, I time and time again, I'm still learning that process of how to trust them more. But man, oh man, it's something that you really just don't know till you're in it, and I feel like if you're in that stage right now, it's just so important to really sit with yourself no matter how hard and difficult that is and how uncomfortable it is, but to really sit with yourself and just, like, feel into those feelings. I mean, if you could find someone either in your own life or just through social media that can help, like a stranger on the internet, like I said, to like not validate, but like help you see the other side of it too is very, it got me through a lot, just like having that realization or like feeling that I'm not alone in this,
Oh, yeah.
because it can be so lonely. So I feel like just like finding some type of support in some way, but also just knowing that, it's going to be difficult. It's not just going to be sunshine and rainbows when you decide to make this life-changing decision, or whatever decision. Doesn't have to be like a huge thing, but it's
Yeah.
going to be hard no matter what. Like I'm not going to be the person that said everything was hunky dory as soon as I decided, actually, I'm not going to renew my license. I'm done.
Oh,
I'm going to
no.
go. I'm
Let's
gonna go move to the big city and teach spin and work at Lululemon. That's what I did. Like
there's big
I
emotional storms that come with the change.
Yeah.
So,
So much
yeah.
turmoil, so much crying, so much just, like, actually going back and forth too with the decision, and
Mm,
based on, I think, people's reaction when I finally did it, I was like, well, maybe actually I'll just, like, take on a few shifts a month, or I'll just, like, work part-time at, like, a clinic instead. I won't work in the hospital, like, trying to, like, soften the blow for myself, but I think it was obviously for other people. It wasn't even for me. I knew I was done. Like, I knew in my head. But it's just, like, it's so wild how, like I said before, people's expectations can cloud our judgment
mm,
and how that can really affect us, and I don't know. To the person, I wish I could have told Kaylee in her early 20s, like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to do what everyone wants for you. It's okay to do what you want for yourself. And like, it's gonna probably make you feel lonely and feel like, you're the black sheep or you're just a weirdo that everyone's like, what do you're gonna have a lot of insecurities around it and things like that. But gosh, just do it because it's just there's so many years, and I could say that right now that I regret not doing it sooner. I regret not doing, certain things, but I had to take the time, I think, that I needed to come around to it and come to it with myself, and that was just a lot of self-healing on my end. Like it was years of that. It wasn't just overnight. So, yeah.
oh, I so appreciate you sharing that. It's the two of us on this call, but it's like the younger versions of us are sitting next to us right now because this topic is so poignant and it does bring up so much. So you made me think. What I would say to my younger self about this is that your intuition will whisper and it will ask questions. Your anxiety and fear will be very loud and it will speak in certainties. And I feel like for me, that's a really helpful way of looking at it because my intuition would always say, well, what about this? Well, what if you did this? What if you tried this? And my fear, of which I had a lot, would be like, you're literally going to die. You know what I mean? And it's
It
a
would tune it all out,
it would
right?
tune
Like
it
it
all
would.
out. Yeah. So I think that, as we're sort of rounding out this topic on regret before we pivot to the discussion of the book, just to anyone listening, this is an invitation to reflect on your own life. Maybe just take 2 minutes today and think about that and say, what is my intuition telling me? What is my fear telling me? Is there something I regret? And what am I learning from it? So I will just put a pin in it with that. And now, Kaylee, I'm going to turn it over to you because you have chosen a book for us for this episode. So you have the floor.
I'm so excited to chat about this book and this author. She's one of my new authors that I just started working with, but she's been a friend for a little while now. Her name is Amber Palmer, and she just released her first book in a new series titled One More Round. It is right behind me, but obviously y'all won't be able to see that. But basically, it is a small town romance. It's brother's best friend. Amber loves to write her older MMCs. So actually, main characters overall. The MMC is Duke, who is 40, and Olivia, the FMC, is actually 37. So later in life, we're seeing their story progress and eventually their love story bloom. And it was a book that honestly I alpha read it for her, so it was like her raw manuscript, and we actually spent a lot of time working through it together. And she will say to this day, she's like, "You had a big part in this book," and it's just like so crazy to think about. But we really worked together, especially on like the depth of the book in terms of the grief and the loss and the regret, things like that were really important factors that Amber wanted to get across the page. So that's kind of what sparked this topic of conversation that I wanted to discuss on the pod today, because my goodness, it was a book that will stick with me for a very long time, and I highly recommend, especially people that are going through transition in life or just like don't know what the heck they're doing or want to make a big change, like pick this up. You will relate at least to these fictional characters and feel like you're less alone.
Well, I love that you chose Amber because I was introduced to her through her book, Between the Pines. And I love her writing style. I love her voice. And I had not read this one yet. And I remember when you and I spoke and you sent me the book dedication, and I'll read it now. And it's never too late to start over and to do the scary thing for the sake of your own peace. And it just really spoke to me and kind of touched on the topic. And I'll connect this back to you mentioning the older characters. A feeling that happens, and by the way, this happened to me when I was like 20, so you can laugh at me, of it's too late for me. I
Yeah.
always had that feeling. I was 23 years old and I was like recovering from an accident. I remember thinking, it's too late for me. I can't change my life. Nothing will ever be good. And that fear filled voice has come up quite a bit in my life. It has lessened the older I've gotten. But I think that that's why when you mentioned this book and you shared that the characters were older, and I was like, oh, I love this because yes, it's powerful and beautiful to hear a 20-year-old talk about regret. That is an amazing story. It is a different story when your characters have some history under their belt. And yeah, I was just so excited about that, Kaylee. So is there sort of a message or a feeling that this book left you with?
Hmm. I think it definitely made me reflect on a lot in my life. I related a lot to the grief components, but also just the whole struggle and journey that Olivia goes through in terms of leaving something that was safe and expected of her, and something that she wanted to like fulfill this legacy and just wanted to follow in the footsteps of her dad, and that was kind of just like what the family expected her to do. And something that has really stuck with me is a line that I swear I'll just get it tattooed on my body eventually one of these days. I told Amber, but her uncle John that she's very close with, that is one of the side characters in the book. He One of his lines, his famous lines, is that regrets are for fools. And he was just like, he would poke fun at certain things or just like tell Olivia to like lighten up, because she's always just so stressy and just like trying to have everything together and take care of him because he is actually sick in the book. And and he just like really wanted her to slow down and just like see life for where it's at. And I think her coming back to the small town, her hometown, to take care of him really just changed things. And that feeling for me of just like, yeah, that sense of peace, I guess, when you do the thing and you feel that like peace wash over you once you're like, okay, this actually was the right decision for me. That's what I related to a lot, in this book that was portrayed through her journey from leaving that to starting fresh. So yeah.
Well, one of the words that stood out to me is legacy. And I really do like the fact that this book touches on that because there is the legacy that's handed to us, and then there's the legacy that we choose for ourselves. And just because something is handed to us doesn't mean we actually have to carry it or hold it. I'm talking about bigger things, even beyond this book. So I'm talking also about the legacy of choice and happiness and intuition and building a life that is the shape of you, that you wake up every day and you feel comfortable in, and how different that can feel. And whether you do that at 20 or like the main characters, you do it later in life, how powerful that is. And what is the legacy of that? Like, how does that affect the world around you when you are living the life that you want to live, that you feel complete rightness in? And I just think it's an important discussion. And so that's why I so love these books. And you've kind of just like knocked out of the park with every book choice so far because they just bring up
I
these
try.
really, yeah, you do, but like they bring up these really important topics. And, fiction is such a powerful way to look at this because, as we often talk about in these discussions, it's like a low consequence way of reflecting on our own lives and saying, oh, how am I making my choices and what's impacting me, and like what direction could I go in and what would that feel like? So I just love that you selected this, and I really appreciate because you did reach out to Amber and she sent us a little love letter, And I'm just going to take a pause and we can listen to her love letter right here, right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Palmer, author of One More Round, a small town contemporary romance. For those who may not know, One More Round is book one in the Pinecrest Ridge series. It follows Duke and Olivia, who are both older main characters, facing the realization that the dreams that they once longed for may not actually have been the life that they were set out to lead. I wrote this book from a place of intimate understanding, knowing that the dreams I had 10 years ago are not the same as those I have now, and that is totally okay. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to find where we're meant to be. I hope you enjoy.
Oh, Amber, thank you so much for sending us that love letter. And Kaylee, thank you for making that happen. And Kaylee, I really want to kind of round this episode out with you sharing with us who needs to read this book. Can you talk to the reader right now who literally needs to sit down, open this book, and just be in their fields?
Yes, I will hold your hand too while I say this from afar. But I think if you're really struggling right now to just like feel like you're settled in your life in your own terms, if you're feeling very anxious, frazzled, like you're not doing enough or being enough, or you're confused about where the heck you're at, I think reading this book and reading Olivia and Duke's story is going to be very beneficial, very relatable, no matter what age you are, but especially if you're in your 30s, like myself. It was very just like eye-opening and reassuring. Like I felt like I was being, held with this book and with Amber's words, just like having that reassurance that, I did do the right thing for me and I'm so proud of that. And I also was just so proud of Olivia and Duke because he also went through a lot in this story. We get a lot of mental health rep with Duke, which I love. So we also get to see his journey and coming to terms with where he's at and starting over with Olivia. And they're both single parents as well. So there's a lot of layers that comes with the story. And it's just like overall, no matter what's going on, each of them, they choose themselves with finding each other and like falling in love. And it's really just a very hopeful story that I feel like everyone should read.
Oh, I needed those stories. And I love reading about the romance that happens at that time in life. And I almost feel like it's a secret that we keep hidden. So I love these stories. You know what it just made me think of? I just had this like weird flash of a memory. And it was actually a few months before I met my partner. I remember I was out to dinner with a group of people, and as happens, they sort of forgot that I was the demographic that they were making fun of. And I remember someone at the table said, "Oh, you know those women who are like over 35 who don't have kids, who've never been married? There's definitely something wrong with them." And I was sitting there at 36 just being like, "Okay." And I feel like those moments that can make you feel a certain way. I feel like these stories kind of are the voice you need to hear at those moments, right? Because like the society can tell you that, the world can hit, even your friends, and can say things sometimes that are not helpful. And I think it's
Yeah.
really powerful to have those balancing stories and to remind us that you are allowed to build a life that fits you, and that
Yes.
their destiny, fate, whatever we create and manifest, whatever word or belief you have, I don't know. I don't know that everyone else gets to decide that timeline. And you can be like
Yeah.
delighted by your life and the things that happen, and you don't have to be disappointed. Like some of the best things that have ever happened in my life happened after that moment. That horrible moment when I was sitting at that table feeling like, well, they're talking about me. And yeah, in the time since, there's been like a beautiful unfolding. So I guess I'm just saying that to anyone who's feeling that way, whether you're 20 and you feel that, 30, 40, your life is allowed to unfold in its own time frame.
And I think too it's important to remember as well, and what this story taught me was that you don't have to have it all figured out in order to let new people in, because that was a huge wall that Olivia had up, was like, I need to get my own life together and be there for my daughter, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my career. Like I don't have time or energy for this hot mustached man that's distracting me. And I feel like that's so realistic because for years now I've just been like, oh, I'm too busy to find someone. That's too much. I'm focusing on my career. Like, I don't need that. But it was just so refreshing to read like how she navigated that balance and how like it is possible. And usually when you are working on yourself and you're like really like your situation, right? Like you decided to like go off the ledge and start this new career, and that's when you met the love of your life. Like that's usually how it happens. And I love to feel hopeful about that too for myself. I'm like, okay, now that I'm not on autopilot and hating my life every day, maybe someone will just swoop in. Maybe I should go out more in order for that to happen. But it's so relatable where
Or
we're
you
just like,
can pull a Casey and go to the most remote spot in the
yeah,
entire world and randomly walk into an empty cafe, and the only other person who's in that spot will be there.
exactly. I will take your words of wisdom and your
Yeah.
life lessons 100%. So
That lights my heart up. And, I'm so glad we had this conversation. Hey, maybe our next conversation is about liberating ourselves from this idea of perfectionism and virtue testing in order for good things to happen. I mean, that would be like a deep and dark conversation because I feel like the whole world feels that way. And I
yeah.
really disagree. I don't think you have to be perfect in order for perfectly beautiful things to come into your life. So, Kaylee, on like the cusp of the luckiest day in the year, I'm going to close this episode and ask you, what are you most hopeful for in the weeks to come?
Oh goodness. I feel like a lot of my responses to this question have been like overarching things, like really big picture things, like, you know, being more present, having more balance, all these things. And for me, it's just like it sounds so silly, but it's just like as humans, I think we all need this reminder. I just need to go outside more and touch some grass and be in the sun. Like I just hope for more days like that, especially now that it's like summer almost where I'm at, but it's just something that I feel like those simple like hierarchy of needs as humans we sometimes forget about, and we're like, why are we feeling so off? Like why are we feeling so anxious and, you know, down and all this stuff? And it's like, oh, well, when's the last time I went outside and just like sat in the sun? You know, like things like that. So I'm hoping for more just like moments of being like when I'm overwhelmed or overstimulated because I'm on my computer and my screen like all day every day. It's like I hope that I can just like have a gut check and be like, okay, I'm just gonna go actually sit outside, take a little breather, and that will probably fix a lot of things that I'm dealing with right now. Keep it simple.
Oh, I feel that. Oh,
Yeah.
completely. You should come visit. I think you would actually really like California. I mean,
Don't
everything.
tempt me with a good time.
Yeah, everything is outside. And I know that you've like seen some stuff on my Instagram. I actually don't post a
Oh,
ton, but like everything we do is out. We eat outside. Like everything is outside all the
oh,
time. And that's really nice. And maybe that's the season you're in.
I love
So yeah, I love that you shared all of that. And I will say for me, actually the last time we had this conversation, I mentioned my intuition and I did listen and I made a huge change. I was thinking of you and me talking when I was making that
no
decision and I felt
way.
really good about it. And I will say I am hopeful that I just continue to lean into the creativity that is full on flowing through my life and I
Mm,
see where it takes me. That I treat it like a river that's bringing me somewhere versus bracing for impact like I'm whitewater rafting. Like I'm
yeah,
visually imagining myself just kind of flowing with it and just seeing where I land. So, yeah, that's what I'm
I love
hoping
that.
for. So,
Not letting it like overwhelm you too,
yes,
which is
not letting it overwhelm me at all. So I love that we do these episodes. And for anyone listening, you are always welcome to submit a love letter. You can check the show notes and the email address is there. We would love to read about where hope is showing up in your life, like where you're looking for that, where you're establishing that. I really feel like these conversations are beautiful. And I love that we're tying the books in. So, just as a reminder, Kaylee, the book you mentioned this episode was
One More Round by Amber Palmer, and you can
great.
find it everywhere. It's on Kindle Unlimited as well, and the paperback is up on Amazon. And Amber also has a website with some beautiful foiled special editions that are available as well to purchase. So just so you know.
Oh, I love that. And I will have information for Kaylee in the show notes. And hopefully, Amber will join us for an episode sometime in the future because I just feel like we have a lot to talk about. Amber, we have a lot to talk
Yes.
about. I've never met you,
You.
but I feel like we need to talk. So, anyway,
Yeah, she's
everyone,
the
thank you.
capper.
Exactly, right? Kaylee, thank you so much for doing this. And it was so good to chat with you.
Yes, thank you so much, love. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you're interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandbookspodcast@gmail.com.